Hello, my lovely anatomist and physiologist, Michele Glass here, and our topic for this video is hair. So what is hair? Hair is a highly keratinized filament that grows from the epidermis. So one of the ways we can talk about this tissue is that it's an epidermal derivative. Epidermal derivative. And let's think about all the places where we find hair on our body. So we're going to find hair on our skin. So we have like the soft peach fuzzy type of hair. We're going to find hair on the top of our head. We're going to find hair in our eyebrows, eyelashes, in our nose, in our ear, right? And so let's remember hair is located in all these places. Let's not just think about the luxurious hair that you may or may not have on the top of your head. And when we think about then hair in all these places, I think it helps us to better understand the job of hair. So hair is like providing protection. So this might be on top of your head, protection from ultraviolet radiation. This might be your eyebrows, preventing a lot of flow of sweat or rain or debris into your eyes. This might be your eyelashes, helping to prevent a lot of material debris from getting into your eyes. The hair in our nose and in our ears can be very helpful in helping to prevent things from gaining entrance to our body from these relatively large openings. We can also talk about sensory input. Your hair is found growing in a hair follicle, and at the base of each hair follicle, you have a nerve. And so when our hair moves, we're able to detect that. So this could be important if we're talking about an insect on your body, right? That's usually when I feel the hairs on my arms moving. Thermoregulation. Remember, thermoregulation is talking about keeping your body temperature. So in this case, it's helping to sort of warm and insulate the body. And hair can also be important in communication. And here, I think let's connect that back to our sensory input and this idea of realizing, if we have, a bug touching us type of thing. When we talk about hair, we will see that you have three types. So we have a lanugo hair type, we have vellus hairs, and we have terminal hairs. And the lanugo is found on the fetus. Fetus means before birth, and the lanugo hair is often shed before birth. So it's not something that we typically see on a full-term infant. The vellus hairs we can think of as like our peach fuzz hairs. And here you should really think about the prepubescent human. So the infant, the toddler, the school age kiddo, right? And think about that soft hair that's found all over the body. And then the terminal hairs are the darker, let me rephrase, more darkly pigmented. This is true no matter, what form of melanin you have producing your hair color. They're going to be more darkly pigmented and they're going to be thick. And so initially think head on your hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes. These are examples of terminal hairs. Now, it's important to note that vellus hairs can convert to terminal hairs at puberty. And the distribution of that conversion, it matters depending on the type of hormones that your body has. So if your body has testosterone, then you're going to see the more darkly pigmented and thickening of hairs on the face, on the chest, on your back, arms and legs, armpit, groin area, right? If your body has estrogens, then you still get that change happening in the armpit and groin area, and to some extent on arms and legs, but typically not chest, back, face, right? So we do see some differences there. And that conversion, really, we call that like pubic hair. So that is what's happening in that case. And then the last little kind of general piece of information to pick out here before we look at some anatomy is the hair growth cycle. So we have 3 stages: anagen, catagen, I'm gonna draw mine like a triangle, and telogen. So anagen, catagen, telogen, back to anagen. So anagen is where you have a high level of cell division. And so you have growth of that hair from like 2 to 7 years. So there's going to be both a genetic and an environmental component depending on your nutrition, right? After that period of time, you go into the catagen, which is like this holding time for 2 to 3 weeks. So you have no new growth. You're just sort of in transition. And from there, you get to a full-on resting stage where you have no growth. And this is occurring for 2 to 4 months. So the follicle is basically inactive. And then there'll be a signal for that follicle to reactivate, and you'll start again growing a new hair, and you'll push out the old hair. And that's shedding. Okay. Last thing I'd like to do with you is try to give us some anatomy. So let's try a few drawings here. So I think what I want to do first is draw my hair. And I'm going to do like a series of concentric circles. So I'm going to do first my medulla as the innermost portion of my hair. And then I see the next layer is called the cortex. And then the next layer is called the cuticle. So the cuticle is the outermost portion of the hair. And the cuticle has very hard, keratinized cells. And the cortex is shaped either straight or curly based on the hair follicle. And the medulla then is going to have kind of a soft, flexible, keratinized cell. And the hair itself, so this drawing here is the hair, is going to be surrounded by a hair follicle. And so the hair follicle, we could draw it next if we wanted. So this next layer we call the inner root sheath. And then we have another layer around that, which we call the outer root, external root sheath. And then the very next layer we call the glassy membrane. And so what I've drawn here in the outer 3 circles would be the hair follicle, and the inner 3 circles would be the hair. So again, doing a cross-sectional cut from the inside to the outside, you have the hair medulla, hair cortex, hair cuticle, and then surrounding the hair, you have the hair follicle. And the hair follicle then has 3 layers. The innermost layer of the hair follicle is called the inner root sheath, external root sheath, and then glassy membrane. So this is our cross-sectional appearance. Let's make an attempt at drawing more of a longitudinal view. Okay, let's begin by drawing our squiggly line for our dermis, but I'm gonna leave a gap in the middle. I'm gonna make sure that I've labeled this as my dermis. And then we're going to draw next our epidermis. So coming up from my squiggly line, I'm just going to draw a line, and then I come down to actually form that hair follicle and come up. So here is my epidermis. So we see that even though the hair follicle is embedded down into the dermis, it's composed of epidermis. And then let's try to draw that hair. So the portion of the hair that sticks out is called the hair shaft. And as it embeds into that hair follicle, it's going to be called the hair root. And then the lower portion here kind of rounds at the base, and that's called the hair bulb. Okay, so now you're seeing my limitations with my drawings. So the hair shaft is the portion of the hair that sticks up out that we see. The hair root is down in the hair follicle, and at the base, you have what's called the hair bulb. Now the hair bulb includes, you have a blood vessel that sticks up from the capillary up into that hair bulb. And that capillary is called the hair papilla. So that area contains both the blood vessels and the nerves. So you can draw the nerve innervation coming up there a little bit if you want. That's usually shown like in yellow. And then sitting right on top of the hair papilla, you have what's called the hair matrix. And the hair matrix contains the stem cells. So that means the mitotically active cells for new cell production. So these are the living cells. As long as you have an intact, healthy hair matrix, then you have the ability to regrow hair. You have the ability to go from the telogen phase into the anagen phase. So the hair bulb is including, you know, this whole area with both the hair matrix and the hair papilla. What we also see associated with the hair follicle is, and I want it to stick out into the dermis, you have a gland called the sebaceous gland. And we're going to talk more about it in just a little bit of time. And then kind of alongside that, you have a smooth muscle called the erector pili muscle. Oh, you know what? Y'all will want to look up some nice diagrams of hair follicle. You have them in your textbook. So you can see, you know, what additional artistic edits you'd like to make here. That erector pili muscle is going to be important in contracting up against the sebaceous gland, actually squeezing sebum into the hair follicle, which is going to help coat. Let's do a little drawing here. So the sebaceous gland gets squeezed by the erector pili muscle. And when that happens, sebum, which is a lipid-rich secretion, comes out, coats on top of that stratum corneum. So it's helping with water resistance, and it's helping to lubricate those keratinized cells of the stratum corneum, but then it's also helping to sort of lubricate that hair shaft and the highly keratinized cells of the hair shaft. So we will talk more about the sebaceous gland in the future. The other thing that we see with the erector pili muscle, when it contracts, that's what gives goosebumps or makes your hair stand up on end. Okay, that's it for this video. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.